Welcome to our final session of Heart Treasure of the Enlightened Ones. So I think we should approach this as something which we can apply in terms of the path to enlightenment, with the intention to establish, with the intention to ultimately undertake this study so that we can practice the Dharma and establish all beings at the level of perfect freedom and enlightenment. So we have had the privilege to study a text which comes from a tradition both of what we call transmission and also realization. We have the Dharma as it comes down to us as a tremendous heritage through the Buddhist tradition. But also we have the Dharma as it exists within the Buddhist tradition as realization, as persons who have actually felt and realized this, the nature of the Dharma, peeled away confusion and brought forth then awakening or realization. So in this way we're connecting with a very pure lineage, something that a lineage that goes back to the time of the Buddha. And we have two extraordinary great sages then directly speaking to us here. We're fortunate that Dingochen's Rinpoche, he lived in this century or he lived in the last century, but he's lived in recent times. And between him and Paltro Rinpoche, there was just 2 generations. Dingochen's Rinpoche's teachers met Paltro Rinpoche. So, for example, the great Jamgun Mipam Rinpoche, who blessed Dingochen's Rinpoche, he was a close student of Paltro Rinpoche. So we begin with invoking these 2 teachers with this supplication here. First to Paltro Rinpoche and then to Dingochen's Rinpoche. Outwardly you are the Bodhisattva Shantideva. Inwardly you are Shavaripa, Lord of Siddhas. Secretly you are truly noble Avalokiteshvara, dispeller of pain. I supplicate you, Jigme Chögyal Wangpo, embodiment of the twofold wisdom of all the Buddhas. You are Manjushri, play of wisdom's tenderness. Great chariot of the Buddha's teaching, king of knowledge. I supplicate you, Pema Dongak Lingpa. So presently we're within the second part of the book, and within that then we're in the section on the path of the Tantras. We've looked at the development stage, and now within the completion stage practices, we're then attending to the key point really of the entire Vajrayana, which is transformation, or if you like, recognition of the actual nature of what we perceive through our senses, what we feel through our emotions, and the aggregates that are the basis of this. So first we're going to look at the aggregates. And the aggregates, there you have first the aggregate of form. And so Paltro Rinpoche says, form is unborn, primordially void like the sky. The quintessence of this awareness void is Chenrezi. It is none other than the sublime king of the sky. In the view of voidness, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So when we talk about the skandha form, it's the place where we begin to take ourselves, you could say, seriously, and we begin to freeze this sense of other. So there's this relationship between self and other that all of a sudden operates from a self-conscious perspective, and that's where we cease to actually see the world properly. We just see a frozen version of the world, and similarly also our experience with our own consciousness is no longer free, it's frozen. And that's the condition that then begins to take that becomes the basis of what we call a sentient being. Now I've uploaded a text, and if I haven't, I thought I had, and if it's not there, I'll check and I will upload it, from Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, the development of ego, that describes quite clearly the development of these, well, the process of what brings about this experience of being a sentient being, of being who we are basically. But in terms of understanding, why did we move from confusion in the first place? So what we have then, as in a solid world, is really just a frozen version of appearances. Now, the thing is, where we go wrong, neither the outer world nor our body or the sense of us as a person, as a discrete entity, possesses any reality. And that's where the entire confusion originates. The skandhas are the basis for our imputing the deluded notion of self. So that's why the skandhas are important. That's why we want to understand these. See, this is where you can say the modern science and the science of Buddhism differs, because we need to understand that right from the start we're confused. To begin to make any assumptions about the world out there, we could assume as the objective world, and similarly also in terms of understanding our own being, without understanding that there's actually a profound confusion that's taking place, we will never really get to an actual science of truly understanding what there is. Now, the recognition then, seeing things for what they are, the empty nature of this skandha of form is what we call Chenrezig, the king of the sky. This is how we understand the purity of the skandha of form. So all the skandhas, they are innately pure, innately free from this delusion of self. But it's on the basis of the skandha, the various skandhas and so forth, that we then imply or impute this existence of a self. So in recognizing this empty nature of phenomena, we then chant the 6-syllable mantra. Then the second skandha, feeling. Feeling is the lasso that binds mind and object together. When you know it as non-dual sameness, it is Chenrezig. It is none other than the sublime, bountiful lasso. In the realization of same taste, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So on the basis then of the skandha of form and the sense of I, me, then we begin to have this self-centering that then begins to say, nice, not nice, likes and dislikes, pleasure and pain. So this is what continually then aggravates us. So the feelings that others do not bother us. The thing is, the whole drama is around me. So we, of course, understand there's countless experiences of feeling in the universe, but we're just stuck within our isolated experience of just me and what I feel. And this is not a value judgment. This is just a condition of confusion. And so understanding this delusional condition, then we understand what it is that the skandha of feeling is all about. And we understand that this like and dislike is what then drives everything really that we call the samsara, or what we also refer to as the 3 worlds of existence. The thing is, feeling, like anything, has no reality. And this recognition, again, is the wisdom of sameness. So the purity of feeling we call the Chenrezig bountiful lasso. And then Rinpoche says, with conviction and one-pointed devotion, chant the 6-syllable mantra. Rinpoche says, when through the realization of voidness, you perceive samsaric phenomena as infinite purity, you unlock the enlightened counterpart of the skandha of feeling, the treasury of ever-enriching qualities. This is the jewel-born Buddha, Ratnasambhava. The thing is, whenever there is something in our confused condition that we solidify, when we then, you could say, unlock it, in the sense that we see it for what it is, then we have the enlightened counterpart. We have this naturally innate purity of this phenomenon. And there's not a single phenomenon in samsara that does not have this intrinsic purity, which is why we would say we're never going to find nirvana outside of samsara. What we're looking at is not that there's something wrong with the object and the phenomenon themselves, but the delusion that we're projecting onto them. So, in terms of the skandha of feeling, its pure aspect is then the jewel-born Buddha Ratnasambhava, or we could also say Chenrezi, bountiful lasso. Appraisal. Appraisal, if you keep taking it as valid, it is delusion. When you turn to all beings with compassion, it is Chenrezi. It is none other than the sublime one who dredges the depths of samsara. In compassion without bias, recite the 6-syllable mantra. By the way, I forgot to mention, today is actually the day that we celebrate the parinirvana, or the passing of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Rinpoche passed in 1991. And today is then the day of his passing. So we're celebrating that. So in terms of the third skandha, so we first have the skandha of form, this frozen sense of I and the object that we then relate to in terms of likes and dislikes feeling. And then we begin to, you could say, validate or conceptualize what we are perceiving as actually having a real identity. Based on these feelings, we then say, oh, that's good, and that's bad, and so forth. These labels themselves, they're based on a self which we then have already developed through the first two skandhas, form and feeling. Now, when we see through this sort of this pattern of self-centering, and we replace this conceptualizing with something far greater, which is the empathy for infinite sentient beings, we then refer to this compassion as Chenrezi, he who dredges the depths of samsara. Chenrezi Korwa Dongrup. And you sometimes see this translated as Chenrezi churning the depths of samsara. And this is then this is the notion that there's nothing that's left. Like if you're dredging the depths, you're like really stirring up everything. There's not any kind of nook and cranny that you haven't actually attended to. So every sentient being, right down to the deepest, most confused condition of samsara, is attended to. So this name speaks about Chenrezi never leaving a single being behind. Rinpoche says, the first skandhas is your first apprehension of an object. The second skandha is your feeling that the object is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral to you. The third skandha is your appraisal of the intensity of that feeling as strong, medium, or weak. Your mind then holds on to this appraisal as something real and valid, which forms the basis for the subsequent two stages. It's through this sequence of processes, the 5 skandhas, that all suffering comes about. And it's not just in the Mahayana or the Vajrayana that we study the 5 skandhas. This is basic to all Buddhism. To understand what this delusion of self is, we identify how it's a construct. And we do this in all the traditions in Buddhism. This is the Vipassana, or the wider perspective, that sees through, or the study of the 5 aggregates is what sees through this assumption of a self. Then we have the 4th skandha, impulse, samskaras, or duce. Impulse, as some samsaric actions, keeps you circling in the 6 realms. If you realize samsara and nirvana are the very same, it is Chenrezi. It is none other than the greatly compassionate transformer of beings. Acting for others in one single taste, recite the 6-syllable mantra. Did I just miss something here? No. Let's just see here. It's all right. I'll have to see how that occurred here. Then Could that be in the commentary? Unfortunately, I'm traveling, so I don't have my book with me. Anyway, if any of you have the book in front of you, is it in the commentary then that Chenrezi is referred to as the mighty lord of the dance? That's odd. Okay. Anyway, basically, impulse is once we have solidified phenomena, likes and dislikes, and given them a label, then we begin to act. Because on the basis of this this afflicted perception, we begin to then act and put down patterns. And this is then this comes about on the basis of the former skandhas, but it is what creates karma. Let's see if somebody's come up with that. Sorry, I should really have a it's in the commentary. Okay, good. So, so we both refer to Chenrezi here in terms of mighty lord of the lotus dance, Pema Garwang, and also as the Tujin Drundul. Yeah? Drundul Tujin Bolona me. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, when we see the emptiness of this, when chanting the 6-syllable mantra, what is being said here is not that we need to have some, you could say, continual, gosh, there's all these Chenrezis. That's not it. We're really just identifying the value of the aspects of Chenrezi. So in that we recognize the empty nature of phenomena, we're emphasizing that we're seeing the emptiness of everything, including now as we're going through the skandhas, we're also seeing that every aspect of the skandhas we can identify with Chenrezi. So we say impulse is empty and its purity is Chenrezi, mighty lord of the lotus dance. Now, free of self, it is the realization of the one taste of samsara and nirvana. In some way, we could say all these various ways of getting at it is celebrating the qualities of Chenrezi. So, as we recite the 6-syllable mantra, then recognizing this one taste of samsara and nirvana, this is then this aspect of Chenrezi. Rinpoche says, aspire from your heart to help all beings and dedicate to them all your merit, with the conviction that Chenrezi acknowledges your aspirations and gives you his blessing to bring them to fulfillment. So this way we can also generate this sense that there's a recognition from Chenrezi, that we have the force of Chenrezi with us. And then we have the 5th skandha. Like Rinpoche says, this is the kingpin, or this is the one that binds all together the sense of I. And then we operate within this as the sense of me. And then with that, then all the various ways that we function in terms of relating to our world. So here it says consciousness, the expression of ordinary mind, has, and this means the ordinary confused mind. Consciousness, the expression of ordinary mind, has 8 functions. If you realize mind to be Dharmakaya, it is Chenrezi. It is none other than the sublime ocean of conquerors. Knowing that your own mind is the Buddha, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So when we say 8 functions here, we're talking about the eight aspects of consciousness. And if you've been finding rest in the nature of mind, we've gone into that in some great detail. But basically, we talk about this consciousness as the basic delusion of self, and then basic confusion on the basis of that, then a sense of I. And then we have all the various perceptions, including also the mind that thinks. So we talk about the 5 senses and the thinking mind, that's 6, the sense of self or the ego, that's 7, and then the ground of all of this, which is the basic confused consciousness or the alaya vijnana. Now, in this way, it's consciousness that gathers all the skandhas into the delusion of self. This is where you could say these styles are held together. Now again, while this nature is empty, we are held by this delusion, and that perpetuates samsara. So it's important that we recognize the emptiness of this, with that we analyze, we see the emptiness of any compounded, or you could say dependently arisen phenomenon, But also we need to understand that this delusion goes on. Just because we could have some insight, we're still held by this delusion. So it's essential that we focus on eliminating this delusion, which is what we do through the practice of the path. Here we would say the purity of consciousness is Chenrezi, ocean of conquerors, or Chenrezi Gyalwa Gyamso. What is it again? And Jina Sagara. Rinpoche says, consciousness is, in fact, the deluded mind and its deluded thoughts. Now, once you recognize that consciousness has never come into true existence and can therefore never continue to exist nor come to an end, you will be free from its grip. But until you reach that point, consciousness constantly perpetuating delusion will continue to generate more and more karma. It's therefore crucial that you focus all your efforts on recognizing the void nature of consciousness. When that recognition arises clearly, it is like the light of the day breaking into the darkness of night. So this, what Rinpoche is referring to, understanding how this has never come into true existence, refers to Madhyamika or middle way reasoning that sees that there is nothing that has truly come into existence. There's not something solidly that all of a sudden is there. There's a web of causes and conditions that appear, but existence, nothing has actually come into true existence. So the four essential points related to body, speech, mind, and Dharmakaya. So now we're going to look at the way that this experience of our physical being, our speech, our mind, and our ultimate nature is to be understood in terms of the practice of Chenrezi. So the first one, body, says here, believing the body to be solid is what causes servitude. If you recognize it as a deity, appearing yet void, it is Chenrezi. It is none other than the sublime Kasharpani. In the recognition of the deity's body, appearing yet void, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So, when we look at what we refer to and that we're very attached to as our body, we can see there's actually nothing there. This is all just constructs. There's nothing ultimate about our body. Again, it's a web of causes and conditions. And yet, because of our attachment to it, we have so much suffering. If we look at a sage, if we look at somebody who has detachment and wisdom, yeah, of course they look after their body. They're not, silly. But at the same time, there's not real attachment. And so in that sense, there's not the neurosis around the body. With the neurosis on the body, yes, then we attract all sorts of suffering. So letting go of that, seeing the empty nature of the body is what we call the Chenrezi Kasharpani. And I was looking up Kasharpani, I'm sorry. I'm a very bad instructor here. I couldn't find it. I looked. It was kind of last minute endeavor, but I didn't find out. So if any of you, but don't do it now. Later, don't go on Wikipedia now. But just yeah. So Kasharpani. There's a lot of references actually to Kasharpani. It's very often also the way that we refer to the 11-arm Chenrezi. What am I saying? I think 11-headed. What is it? 11-headed, 6-armed Chenrezi, something like that. 8-armed. Okay. Anyway, the purity of our body is intrinsically Chenrezi Kasharpani. By the way, also just to sort of weave on about my failings here, I should really have actually, I should actually have put in some pictures of all these various forms, because actually they do exist iconographically. So we're referring to Chenrezi, Ocean of the Victorious Ones, and so on, Gyalwa and Lion's Roar, and so forth. All of these actually have a form. I mean, they have an iconographic representation. If ever you go to Kathmandu, if you go to what's it called again? Anyway, if you go to Asantoll and you head down to at the other end, Durbarmarg. No, not Durbarmarg. What's it called again? Oh gosh, I'm forgetting my my way around Kathmandu. Anyway, near Asantoll, not so far down from the street that sort of heads down towards the main drag, away from Ratna Park, you come to a temple that's called Zamling Karmo. And the Tibetans will tell you this is one of the holiest places. It's said that there's a statue in there which is like the jaw. We would actually say the jaw in Lhasa in Tibet has some emanations. One is at the Kichu temple in Bhutan. This is where Dinghu Rinpoche used to live. And the other is the Zamling Karmo, which is in Kathmandu. So there's a temple there which is dedicated then to Chenrezi. This is this place, and around it, this beautiful old Nepali temple, there's more than 100 pictures of various aspects of Chenrezi. And if we look around, also if you look at what's it called, Himalayan art resource or something, you can see many different of these representations of Chenrezi. Okay, so there are many forms of Chenrezi, of Avalokiteshvara. Okay. Now, as far as us practicing here detachment of the body, we chant the visualization, and in general, when we're practicing visualization as deity and we chant mantra, that's breaking our deluded fixation, because we have a sense of body, obviously, and that's not necessarily samsaric, that's universal. Buddhas have bodies, right? But the thing is of fixating, and that's where we get it wrong. That's where we purify this, align ourselves with the original pure condition of physicality through visualizing the deity's form. And also when we chant mantra, we align ourselves with the nada, the sound, the innate sound. So visualization, we align ourselves with innate physicality. Chanting mantra, we align ourselves with innate speech. So this breaks this ordinary deluded fixation of a self. So this is what our body truly is. The wisdom body of Chenrezi is beyond birth and death. It is unlimited and free, not like our body. And the character of this wisdom body is wisdom, love, and power, the qualities that we associate with enlightenment. So this realization is invoked by the recitation of the mantra. Conceptualizing speech and sound. So now we're looking at the speech aspect. Conceptualizing speech and sound is what causes delusion. If you recognize it as mantra, resounding yet void, it is Chenrezi. It is none other than the sublime lion's roar. In the recognition of sound as mantra, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So we enhance what we're doing, our visualization, our invoking of Chenrezi's presence through the practice of mantra. And earlier in the development stage practice, we looked at this section on Vajra speech. When we break down the significance of the mantra, we would say that first the syllable Om invokes the 5 wisdoms, and also we would say that Om at the beginning of any mantra invokes this auspiciousness, the conditions for the intended outcome, So that's the Om. Then Mani means jewel, Padma means lotus, and Hum is invoking then the omniscience, the non-delusion of Chenrezi. So here we would translate it as you, the lotus jewel, grant your omniscience. And we can chant this as if we're calling on someone. We can, of course, say, well, our innate nature is Chenrezi, but we can also operate with and purify our dualistic delusion and make that a skillful means. This then quality of the bhakti and the devotion that calls on someone. So that love of there's something pure that we, for the time being, failing to recognize it in ourselves, we then invoke it as, you could say, the powerful presence of enlightenment as it exists within the universe. So this mantra, chanting it, we would say, is inseparable from the very nature of Chenrezi, and here we would say as Chenrezi lion's roar. We would say this mantra It's something that liberates by sight. So you would very often see carvings in Tibet. People would carve this on rocks and mountains and so on. So just seeing the mantra liberates. Hearing it, the sound itself, us chanting it, thinking of it, remembering it, wearing it, touching it, all of this we say brings liberation. So if we could hear all sounds, actually there's an error here, hearing all sounds as mantra. That's the 6 syllables. This is something that helps us in this life and also in when we pass up beyond this life, the bardo, where there's a lot of very, very strong sounds, and also it connects us with the Dharma in the future lives. So beginning to train right now to begin to hear everything, all sound as mantra, is something that helps us. It's not going to get in the way of our ordinary perceptions. It helps us to be less tangled up with what we're hearing, so we'll hear clearer. And then hearing all sounds as mantra, then we recite the 6-syllable mantra. So as far as the mind then goes, we say clinging to mind's perceptions as true is the delusion that causes samsara. If you leave mind in its natural state, free from thoughts, it is Chenrezig. It is none other than the sublime unwinding in ultimate mind. In ultimate mind, the Dharmakaya, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So, we would say mind is the creator of everything. Mind is the chief, and body and speech, they're the servants. In terms of everything that we're perceiving, both internally and externally, it's colored by this mind. So we need to actually break through this perception of what we project as true. That's what causes samsara. But that's where we need to first have insight into what we're talking about. What is it that we're doing with that view? And then we need to apply it in terms of practice. But just sitting down and practicing is not going to help us. We need to know what we're doing when we're practicing. So that's where we say we first need to have the view. We say meditation without the view of emptiness is not much use. But we need to understand then, what is it about phenomena and what is it about mind that is not solid? What do we mean with that? And what is the mind really? Because we don't need to bring our Buddhist concepts to it, but what the Buddha would like us to do is to look at things. And our assumption is that phenomena have a reality. Now, what the Buddha would like us to do is question that assumption. And that's where we arrive at the view that actually there's nothing there. There's nothing we can objectify. Yes, there's the web of causes and conditions, there is appearance, but there's nothing graspable. There's nothing solid. And that's what we mean with the view of emptiness. But this we need to, again and again, come back to and arrive at certainty about that. The point is, failing to recognize the empty nature of reality, that is what keeps us confused. Now, when we begin to see this empty nature, this nature endowed, so this nature of reality is not just a blank nothing, but it's when we begin to have that freedom of seeing that there's nothing solid about it, it has a manifesting quality. And within our consciousness, when there's no longer this fixating on itself, its natural quality is not limited to just me. It embraces everything without any bias. And so this is compassion. So we would say this empty nature is endowed with a heart of compassion. And this very core, true nature of what is, it's something that we see within this simple present awareness. It's not something hugely complex. It's this ultimate simplicity. Now, if we give thoughts just free reins and just follow thought after thought, it's endless. So we would say thoughts, when they're unleashed with no insight, sorry about the sort of inadequate English here. Unleashed with no insight. Well, yes. Unleashed with no insight. Thoughts create and perpetuate samsara. So that's how samsara comes about. We would say the thoughts are what plunges us into the ocean of samsara. Yet there's no thought, virtuous or harmful, that has any intangible existence. Now that lack of intangible existence, this is an unchanging nature of how reality is. But we might presently not see it, but its nature is still there, even when it is veiled by our obscuring confusion. When obscuration falls away, the nature of mind emerges free and serene. This is Chenrezi, unwinding in the nature of ultimate mind. Chenrezi Senying also. And we would say, recognizing the nature of mind, recite this 6-syllable mantra. Rinpoche says, Chenrezi is one with the primordial nature of your own mind. Do not look for him elsewhere. In order to realize this nature within yourself, request and receive the teachings with unfabricated, heartfelt devotion. Then contemplate and assimilate them into your being. Finally, you will achieve ultimate realization. And then, discussing the ultimate realization, and then we say, everything that exists is the primordially pure continuum of the Dharmakaya. If you meet the Dharmakaya face to face, it is Chenrezi. It is none other than the sublime sovereign of the universe. In the continuum of all-pervading purity, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So when we say Dharmakaya, we refer to this condition where delusion has fallen away. And this manifesting of the quality of awakening we call Dharmakaya. So it's synonymous with enlightenment. And this nature abides with us at all times, but it's veiled. So when it's no longer veiled, brought forth and manifest, we say Dharmakaya. Now, all the manifestation of Chenrezi originates from this awakened condition. It's the ground. That's the real Chenrezi. This nature is realized through the practices of tranquility and insight. So in Buddhism, everywhere we practice shamatha and vipassana. It doesn't matter if we're practicing in one tradition or another, or whatever. Sometimes we don't use those words, but even though we in the highest teachings, there's never ever a time when we don't practice shamatha and vipassana. It's the foundation for samadhi, and it's the foundation for us eliminating confusion. The Dharmakaya nature is Chenrezi's sublime sovereign of the universe, Avalokiteshvara, or Jigten Wangchu. When we practice, as we progress through the practice of the path, Rinpoche says that you will reach the first bhumi, the path of seeing, the actual glimpse of reality. That's seeing evilessness, that's seeing emptiness. This glimpse must be further cultivated until the complete elimination of obscurations. So that's then when we break away from samsara altogether, and that's the 10th bhumi, the path of no more learning, which is enlightenment. So this is where we have these 5 paths, the path of accumulation, the path of joining, and then the actual path of seeing things. And then familiarizing ourselves with that is what we call the path of meditation, that then leads to the 5th and ultimate path, which sometimes we could say is beyond path, which is the path of no more learning. Rinpoche says, Chenrezi himself is the Tathagata, the very essence of Buddhahood, and all the qualities of the Dharmakaya will develop effortlessly through the recitation of his 6-syllable mantra. So concluding the second discourse, which is what we've been covering now, the view, meditation, and action of the Mahayana, which has had 2 sections, the section of the Sutra, which basically was referring to the practice of the tantric preliminaries and identifying how all of Sutrayana is contained within the tantric preliminaries in the Nundo, and then the aspect of mantra, which have then been discussed in terms of the 2 stages, development and completion stage practice. So we've covered this then, and this then we refer to as the view, meditation, and action of the Mahayana. So we're now concluding that. Rinpoche says, one deity, Chenrezi, embodies all Buddhas. One mantra, the 6 syllables, embodies all mantras. One Dharma, bodhicitta, embodies all practices of the development and completion stages. Knowing the one which liberates all, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So Chenrezi is the very ground of all the enlightened ones. So this nature of compassion is the core of enlightenment. It's the very core of non-delusion. So we would say all Buddhas have the nature of Chenrezi. There are many ways of understanding enlightenment, and we could understand this ground of enlightenment as being Chenrezi. We can invoke this through the 6 syllables, and we would say in there all dharmas, all the teachings are complete. And the Sangha of Bodhisattvas is manifestation of Chenrezi. Let's give that a capital as well. We sometimes refer to Sangha as everybody practicing on the path, but sometimes we talk about the so-called Arya Sangha, or the Sublime Sangha, which are then the Bodhisattvas. So that also, these are manifestations of Chenrezi. All wisdom, compassion, and power is contained within the recitation of the mantra. All the qualities of enlightenment, which we sum up in terms of wisdom, compassion, and power, all of that is present within the recitation of the mantra. Rinpoche says, your body, speech, and mind are essentially one with the enlightened body, speech, and mind of Chenrezi. This you should recognize as the quintessence of the practice. So, practicing the yoga of reciting the 6-syllable mantra, we're aligning ourselves with our innate enlightened body, speech, and mind as inseparable from Chenrezi. Now, to succeed on the path that we're presenting here, we need to sustain and strengthen bodhicitta, the wish to establish all beings in enlightenment. Cultivate the insight of absolute bodhicitta and deepen it with relative bodhicitta. So the way of the Kadampas is understand the nature of mind, free from any reference point, and then enhance it and deepen it with this relative bodhicitta, which has 2 aspects. One is this wish may all beings attain enlightenment, and then actually going ahead and doing something about it. To practice the path through all its aspects, all the various trainings, the discipline, the meditation, and cultivation of wisdom, all of that are then the application, particularly the practice of the 6 paramitas. So this is how we then apply this relative bodhicitta. And this relative bodhicitta is then what enhances the absolute wisdom aspect of bodhicitta, which is the absolute freedom from any reference point. Now, with this in mind, we pursue the practice of Chenrezi with this perspective. And as we do this, delusion, our confusion will diminish, wisdom, our natural disposition, will bloom, and the 2 benefits will be accomplished, benefiting ourselves and others. So then, this concludes the second part, which are the view, meditation, and action of the Mahayana. And here we've covered the sutra teachings and the mantra teachings. So you could say the discourse in terms of the Dharma, the view and meditation action, has been completed. Now Paul Rinpoche is going to make some strong statements. He started off making some strong statements about the present day, and he's going to say something to us practitioners who kind of suffer a little bit from the extreme of eternalism, thinking we're going to be here forever. And this is very much sort of a heart-spoken advice. But the point really is here to be determined. Khyentse Rinpoche says, and this is then, we're first going to look at the aspects of leaving samsaric activity behind in all the various ways that our ordinary confused activity plays out. But this is where we want to generate what we call renunciation. Khyentse Rinpoche says the primary point of renunciation is to leave all samsaric activities behind in order to practice the Dharma single-mindedly. So, verse 65 reads, "What use is all you've done? Being so busy just causes samsara. Look how meaningless all you've done has been. Now you'd better just stop trying to do anything. Dropping all activities, recite the 6-syllable mantra." The point that will be made here, and here in terms of our actions, and what Rinpoche elaborates upon, is a very simple point, but it needs to be really taken to heart, is that in all our lives, whatever we've done, it has been absolutely futile. Everything that we put into it, all these efforts have led to absolutely nothing. We might think that we have something meaningful accomplished, but in terms of us extracting ourselves and being able to help ourselves and helping others, these efforts are actually wasted. Rinpoche says the more you do, the more you have to do, and the more your hardships multiply. But the final outcome of all your toil and trouble will last no longer than a drawing made on water with your finger. When you acknowledge the frustration and futility of so much meaningless activity, it becomes clear that the only truly worthwhile undertaking is to practice the Dharma. So that was about our physical activity. In terms of our verbal activity, speaking, what use is all you've said? It was all just pointless prattle. Look how much irrelevant distraction it has brought. Now you'd better just keep silent. Ceasing completely to speak, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So when we look at the way we have conversations, we speak, we interact verbally, ordinary conversations, they're mainly driven by our ignorant attachment to some agenda or aversion about something. We try and listen to the conversations we have ourselves and others have, and what is being said has very little benefit or consequence, very little ultimate significance. But what this talking does is it increases the agitation of the mind. We can see how we get worked up when we build up our concepts and we verbalize, and they give sort of we pour fuel on the thoughts through verbalizing. This pointless speech, it causes endless distractions. We're endlessly concerned about all sorts of inconsequential, pointless, and ultimately, you could say, toxic objectives. And this causes us to be very agitated. It causes inner disquiet. So rather than do that, why not just practice mantra? Far more beneficial, actually. And also, if we don't interrupt mantra with ordinary pointless speaking, keeping a vow of silence, then just reciting the mantra, very helpful. So then there's moving around. Paul Rinpoche says, what use is rushing around? Coming and going just tires you out. Look how far your wandering has taken you from the Dharma. Now you'd better just settle down and relax your mind. Staying put, carefree and at ease, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So if we look at ourselves, we're always on to something next. We're always, this comes next. We're always busy. We're traveling here and there. Nowadays, worse than ever, right? So we think that we're on to something really meaningful and useful. If we really want to do something that's meaningful and useful, then we should watch the mind. We should see the thoughts that arise and not get caught by them, achieving mastery over our own mind. Thing is, when we're lost in the various realms of samsara, what we're doing, perpetuating karma, is only creating more suffering for ourselves. So better we just stay quiet and align ourselves with Dharma. When we're eating, which in this day and age is it's sort of become a religion. What use is all you've eaten? It all just turned into excrement. Look how insatiable your appetite has been. Now you'd better nourish yourself with the food of samadhi. Quit all that eating and drinking and recite the 6-syllable mantra. So we get all excited about delicious food. We sometimes pay extraordinary amounts of money, and look what it all became. Now, rather than craving this and being obsessing around that, we should just eat the food that we need, but then regard this food as an offering, as we're offering to the deity within, or if you like, think of it as deity without, however. But in this way, we transform this attachment into the accumulation of merit. So we should practice making food an offering, and we should think that through making this offering and transforming the food, then we nourish all sentient beings. Rinpoche actually gives some thorough description here on how to do that. And in this way, we are replacing this craving for food with this delight of something that goes beyond the ordinary habitual patterns, which is samadhi, integrating this experience of wisdom. That gives deep satisfaction, and it's something that also eliminates our obscurations. So if we want to be, have satisfaction, it's not going to come from food. It's going to come from samadhi. Thinking. What use are all your thoughts? They've just brought on more delusion. Look how few all of your aims you've managed to achieve. Now, for this life's concerns, you'd better not think too far ahead. Dropping all your plans, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So, of course, this doesn't mean we shouldn't be practical. It doesn't mean we shouldn't save up, etc., etc. But it's more the sort of obsessing with and the way that we distract ourselves with the speculations about what comes next and so forth. So we should really train settling into the present and be free from the sort of tempting sort of narratives of what might come and what was and so forth. We, especially in the modern world, we are so much into verbalizing, articulating, formulating all these narratives about ourselves, our identity, our experiences, our feelings, and so forth. So we should actually let go of that. And this is where we're not becoming stupid. We're just becoming less distracted, becoming more connected and more real. These deluded thoughts that we have, they're endless and they have no point. They're inconsequential. So we shouldn't speculate or plan for this life. We should direct every thought to Chenrezig. So we're very often, our thoughts are sort of all about things out there and inconsequential phenomena. Rather, we should become sadhakas. We should become yogis. We should direct every thought to Chenrezig. This quality of devotion to Chenrezig permeates our being, and it actually, strangely enough, it enables things to work beautifully. There's an element of magic that begins to work. And this magic is not something about doing extraordinary things. It's about relating fully, wholeheartedly, properly with the world, but not doing it with this sort of vacuous overlay of all our thinking. And within that, connecting with the world, we should cultivate love and compassion for sentient beings. All right, somebody came late. You're excused. Actually, it's not you that should apologize. I should apologize. And of course, yes, we're back to standard time instead of daylight saving time here in Australia. Sorry. You should, however, have received some. I would say that the reminders you get through the webinar interface really the emails you get should take this into account. I would think they do. Possessions. What use is all you own? Property is just clinging. Look how soon you'll leave whatever you've got behind. Now you'd better put an end to all your possessive grasping. Ceasing to acquire and hoard things, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So the thing about us and our possessions, as most of us know, is that they're just material. They have no purpose. They disintegrate. They don't last. They cause us infinite frustration, especially nowadays with all our gadgetry. The more we get something that's supposed to help us, the more it actually ends up entangling us and causing us, frustration. And also, the point is also that if we really were to achieve what many of us naively believe would bring us great happiness, namely wealth, it causes anxiety. Of course, we might have wealth without being attached to it. That's wonderful. But very often we can see how wealth causes a lot of complications. How people, they think that they have some wealth and then all of a sudden it's not there. Then they really want to have the wealth. We would say sometimes people who think that wealth brings some happiness, they've never had wealth. So once we begin to sort of be in that neighborhood of wealth, it doesn't work out. Personally, I grew up my parents were not wealthy, but they had friends who were, and I could see, when I grew up, I could see how pointless this whole preoccupation with material success really was. And so true. Tibetans, they also say, wherever you have power and wealth and all these things, you have negativity. So there's another Tibetan saying that goes, as your affluence grows, so does your misery. All is lost at death, yet while we are alive, all this wealth is the cause of countless sufferings. So let's be clear on what really matters. And yes, of course, we need a few basic things to cover our sort of needs and so forth. But we should not waste this precious life, which is the real wealth that we have, on what is futile. Sleeping. What use is all the time you've slept? It was all just spent in a stupor. Look how easily your life is running out in indolence. Now you'd better start to exert yourself wholeheartedly. Day and night, spurning all distraction, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So when we sleep without any awareness, then that reinforces ignorance. That's what we call sleeping like a corpse, without recognizing our dreams. So we need to practice the yoga of sleep to sustain awareness in our dreams. So the way to do this is to, at the end of the day, we clean up, you could say, our mind with recognizing how we've practiced, purifying what was confused, rejoicing in what was positive, and then we enter sleep with awareness. And also here Rinpoche gives some description on how to do that. And applying this practice during the night also blends with the practice of day. And so these two together fuse as a cycle of day and night. This also breaks down the division between meditation and post-meditation. Now, we've looked at these activities that are pointless, and now also there is urgent need to practice. Paul Rinpoche says there's no time, there's no time to rest. When suddenly death is upon you, what will you do? Now you'd better start practicing the sublime Dharma right away. Now quick, hurry, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So this kind of, you could say, anxiety. Actually, Tsongtse Rinpoche, remember in one teaching, he was saying, some people think that to be incredibly sort of slow and serene is really being dharmic, but he says he would have, rather than somebody incredibly slow and serene, he so much respects a practitioner who's completely stressed and freaked out about impermanence. That has value. And this is not the kind of silly stress about the way we get stressed, but that's actually being really, that is really in the spirit of things. Of course, we're not talking about a neurotic version of this. It's just knowing that now is the time to act. It's not the time to be distracted. So it's very intelligent. It's not neurotic. But there is then, in the Dharma, there is a place for stress. There's a place for being worried, or you could say anxious. So, hence the exclamation marks here. There's no time, no time, no time to rest. Death is certain, but we need to ponder this as we live in denial about it. We have an incredible sense that, yes, death happens, but we're not going to die right now. We say death is certain, but when is uncertain. We say that death, contemplating death, brings all the qualities of the path. We'd say it's through the practice of contemplating that we have renunciation. It's through contemplating death that we begin to eliminate confusion, and we begin to achieve the condition of that which is beyond death. And so this enables us to achieve ultimate deathlessness. You might remember in Words of My Perfect Teacher, there's a quote from Milarepa where he says, "Out of fear of death, I escaped to the mountains. Now here in the mountains, I have arrived at the citadel of deathlessness." Something like that. So now is the time to meditate. We have everything present right now. All the conditions are there. Rinpoche says, never forget how swiftly this life will be over, like a flash of summer lightning or the wave of a hand. Now that you have the opportunity to practice Dharma, do not waste a single moment on anything else, but with all your energy and effort, recite the 6-syllable mantra. What can you say about years, months, or days? Look how things change every moment right now. Each moment that passes brings you closer to death. Now, this very moment, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So we can analyze the external world, we can see the beings in the world, we can see how our own life changes by the years, by the months, and by the days. And all the time, it's as if we're just running out, just like when we have a butter lamp, which is certain to be extinguished. It's just a question of when. Rinpoche says it would be foolish to think that you can first finish all your work and then retire to spend the latter stages of your life practicing the Dharma. Can you be certain that you will live that long? Does death not strike the young as well as the old? No matter what you're doing, therefore, remember death and keep your mind focused on the Dharma. In this way, recite the 6-syllable mantra. As your life runs out, like the setting sun sinking away, death closes in like the lengthening shadows of evening. Now what's left of your life will vanish as fast as the last fading shadows. There's no time to waste. Recite the 6-syllable mantra. Rinpoche says, from the very moment of your birth, you're doomed to die. No doctor, however skilled, can prevent it. Death is advancing relentlessly upon you like the shadow of the western mountains at sunset, engulfing in darkness everything in its path. Lord Buddha described as the paragon of speed, a man who could catch in flight all 4 arrows shot simultaneously in the 4 directions by 4 strong bowmen. Yet swifter still, he said, is the coming of death. So Rinpoche gives this story from the life of the Buddha. And the point being here is that we have all these reflections and these meditations, contemplations, because we somehow don't get it. We say reflection on death and impermanence is the strongest incentive we have to practice the Dharma. Please explain the value of adding Shri at the end of the mantra. When we recite, should we do that? You can recite Om Mani Padme Hum Shri, or you can just recite Om Mani Padme Hum. No difference. Absolutely no difference whatsoever. Shri is the heart syllable. It's the seed syllable. Hari, you know. So so Shri is this. It's the seed syllable of compassion. So you could say it's the essence of the mantra. So we throw it in there. We put it sometimes. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum. Same. Mastering the mind. The 6-syllable mantra, although perfect as Dharma, is fruitless, recited while chatting and looking around. And to cling to the number recited is to miss the point outright. Undistractedly, watching the mind recite the 6-syllable mantra. So it's easy to sometimes make fun of, if you traveled in places where Buddhism is practiced, where chanting the 6-syllable mantra is practiced. Well, you do see sometimes people who are sort of like they're sitting with their malas, and then they're sort of gossiping and chatting and sort of looking around. So of course we would say it's fairly easy to say, oh, that's to dismiss it. I can't help, and this is because I come from a country, a culture where you say in the Vajrayana cultures, where people sit around chatting this, it creates so much purpose and so much direction. And coming from a culture where I sadly see old people marginalized and having no point and vision in their lives, then I would say if they just were doing that, that would be great. But of course, yes, it does apply that when we're chanting the 6-syllable mantra, we should be focused. We should sit straight. We should have a mantra. We should have a mind that's calm, directed, focused, and we should be there. So the objective is not, the numbers, but really a deeper understanding and experience. So we should recite, sitting in a good posture, sit straight, peacefully, not being distracted, focusing on the recitation, dedicating ourselves to practice. Really, that's what we are wanting to do. Like we look at the example of Milarepa, and when we do that, then everything works out. Could you recite the mantra so we know what it sounds like? Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Either of these two. That's the Sanskrit. But the truth of the matter is that I follow the Tibetan, so I say Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum Shri, Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. So you have the Sanskrit Om Mani Padme Hum, and then you have the Tibetan version of the Sanskrit Om Mani Padme Hum. Yeah. So that's what it sounds like, recited by a Dane. If you check your mind over and over again, whatever you do becomes the perfect path. Of all the hundreds of vital instructions, this is the very quintessence. Fuse everything into this one single point and recite the 6-syllable mantra. So we have it all here. All of the Buddha Dharma is about mastering the creator of everything, which is the mind. Yet, if we leave the afflictions of the mind, if we just practice reciting or whatever, and we just leave them there, in the sense that we perpetuate them, not leaving them in their own place, which is, of course, a profound instruction, but if we leave them in the sense of just nothing happens, nothing changes in our mind, then the path becomes pointless. Our mind should change. Paul Rinpoche actually says, when we're not focused, we could go years without much changing. But if we are focused, just within days, actually, the mind changes. We should check our mind over and over, seeing what's happening in our mind, and we should apply the antidotes, or we should be, and when we have negative feelings or negative thoughts, and if we have virtuous thoughts, then we should encourage them, cultivate them. ultimately, yes, then we should also let go of them. We should cultivate shamatha and vipassana, tranquility and insight. And there, then, we begin to gain confidence that we can take with us at all times. We begin to have some intelligence, some wisdom that we have beyond the boundaries of meditation and post-meditation. So we need to integrate the experience of wisdom in practice sessions, and also we need to integrate this further into ordinary life. You know, when we say view meditation in action, we're talking about this insight that we then enhance and we familiarize ourselves with in the practices of meditation, and then further enhancing the experience through ordinary life. So this is where we talk about view, meditation, and action. View is the insight, meditation is familiarizing it, but referring to our seat, sitting, and then action is integrating it in ordinary life. So one is the insight, the two others, they're the ways that we actually integrate them. One is through sitting, the focused aspect, and then in the interaction within our world, action. Khyentse Rinpoche says the practice of Dharma should bring you to the point where you can maintain the same constant awareness, whether in or out of the practice session. This is the quintessential point of all spiritual instructions. Without it, however many mantras and prayers you recite, however many thousands of prostrations and circumambulations you do, as long as your mind remains distracted, none of it will help to get rid of your obscuring emotions. Never forget the most crucial point. Never forgetting this most crucial point, recite the 6-syllable mantra. Again, here it applies, it's not about doing something rigid or anything, but it's about just connecting to a soft, clear space, wisdom and compassion, generosity. So, the concluding verses. This first part, my sorrowful tirade at this decadent age's ways, was a reproof I had intended for myself. This sad lament has affected me deeply. Now I offer it to you, thinking you might feel the same. So, so this is the understated way of a sage. You say, oh yeah, I'm onto myself. Like Shantideva, he'll say at the end, No, he'll say actually at the beginning, he says, this is for my own, just to train myself, that he writes this. But the point is that we want to see the meaninglessness and destructive nature of present day way that people behave, the way that we go about our confused actions. And the point here is for us this is not about us getting depressed. It's just about saying this doesn't work, If you're taking a particular remedy, it doesn't work, then you try another remedy. That works, We try things. Oh yeah, this works, We put a little bit of this spice in the food. That's nice. This doesn't work. So when we identify the decadent ways of this age, it's not as if we have to plunge ourselves into some existential depression or anything, which is sort of the drama of the modern style of nihilism, with sort of dismissing, there is no truth the way we thought it would be. And hence, there's no real purpose to our existence and all of that. That's not at all. We just need to be clear on our values and not be naive. And the point here is for us to then begin to be clear about our priorities and changing our attitude. We need to identify what's pointless and then pursue what has meaning. So Paul Rinpoche says, if that is not the case, and you have total confidence in the loftiness of your view and meditation, wise ideas about how to combine the worldly and the spiritual, and the diplomatic skill to settle problems to the satisfaction of all, if you have all that, then I offer you my apologies. So in studying Dingpo Khyentse Rinpoche's commentary, Rinpoche sort of Well, you know, he's consistent in actually following the literalness of Paltar Rinpoche's statement, which is, hey, the point here is to generate renunciation so that we practice the Dharma. But if you're already accomplished, then I apologize for my presumption here. Now, of course, I think myself, I read this very not much as sort of tongue-in-cheek and sort of sense a certain, well, sarcasm is maybe not the politically correct word, and sarcasm is sort of sometimes seen as aggressive. But here I think we have a kind of sarcasm that's not aggressive, but it's intended to kind of get to us. So I might be deluded here, but I'm reading a bit of sarcasm into this, you know. Sorry if you happen to be enlightened, you know. But of course, this is also very appropriate, and this is very much, like we say, the powerful style of the Buddhist way of teaching. But anyway, yeah. So yes, if we got it, then sure, great. How can we measure any progress in our practice? We'll see. We become calmer. We become calmer, and we begin to become more attentive to the others in our lives, with less drama around ourselves. So we would say the mind becomes more relaxed, and we begin to have more compassion. That's the general. Yeah. The second part, my dissertation, establishing view and meditation. Since, of course, I have no experience of realization at all, just sets out what I've understood by the grace of the teachings from the precious lineage of the all-knowing Father and Son. So, all the teachings that we have can be understood in terms of view, meditation, and action, whatever level of Buddhist teaching we're talking about. Yeah? So we have everything gathered in this one place. And then, as far as this statement, I have no realization at all, then Dingul Chenzo Rinpoche, he makes a point about Paltar Rinpoche's, being modest here. Despite this self-deprecation, we should understand Paltar Rinpoche was a realized master, so it's up to the others to make that statement. And Dingul Chenzo Rinpoche says, in reality, of course, he had thoroughly studied and assimilated the teachings of Longchen Rabjam and Jigme Lingpa, father and son of the lineage of the great perfection. So due to the proximity of Longchen Rabjam and Jigme Lingpa, then we refer to this as Kunchen Yapse. Yapse means father and son. So the omniscient father and son, this means the Longchen Rabjam Jigme Lingpa. And if you look in the Longchen Nyingtik Ngöndro, in this calling the Lama, that practice that sums up the preliminary reflections, then it talks about the omniscient fathers, and in one it talks about Longchen Rabjam and Jigme Lingpa. So this is the lineage of Paltar Rinpoche. He had then attained, Khenzo Rinpoche continues, total realization and brought inconceivable benefit to beings. In this discourse, he flawlessly sets out the vital points of the Buddhist path: how to identify delusion, demolish its dominion, and finally transform it into wisdom. So we say, may my mind turn to the Dharma, may the Dharma progress along the path, may the path clarify confusion, and may the confusion arise as wisdom. So we first need to understand, how does confusion live within ourselves? We need to recognize humbly how we have confusion, but not get stuck on that. Then we do something about it. We demolish its dominion, meaning we discontinue this practice of sort of honoring our confusion. not with a drama, not with a struggle, but just through the practice of the path, the wider perspective. And through that, then, the natural condition of the mind manifests. It's naturally, this confusion is transformed into wisdom. The third part, my exhortation to relinquish everything and practice. Though you may well miss the point, just slipped out by itself. Yet since it in no way contracts. Let me just start over again, sorry. The third part, my exhortation to relinquish everything and practice. Though you may well miss the point, just slipped out by itself. Yet since it in no way contradicts the words of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, it would be truly kind of you to put it into practice. So when we generate this revulsion for samsara, it's not about being stuck again with this, but it's about generating then a determination to be free, to know what direction to take. We might want to revise then some of the assumptions that are basic to our choices in life and so forth, our attitudes, and we might want to then really prioritize and get serious with the practice of Dharma. Just going about things as usual, sort of being, deaf and dumb about our reality, nothing is gained through that. There's nothing gained by us wasting this precious moment of having a human rebirth. Nothing is gained by wasting this opportunity. So, Paltrimji says, this discourse, Virtues in the beginning, middle, and end, was written in the Siddha's cave of White Rock Victory Peak for an old friend whose pleas could no longer be resisted by the ragged old fellow Avalokiteshvara, ablaze with the 5 poisons. So Paltrimji was in retreat down at something called Chaka something like that, and he practiced there with 5 close students, and it's then that he wrote this. Presumably somebody who insisted. Now, when he signs off, as he does, Avalokiteshvara, which means actually, literally, some people like Eric Schmidt, he'll translate this as Uncle Tata or Uncle Tatas. The Apu is, it can refer to uncle, and then if we want to read into you could say the pure aspect of this, we would say the A refers to the unborn, the wisdom, and the Pu, meaning actually literally means child, means looking at all sentient beings as if they're your own children. We would say that implies his wisdom and compassion. So the A implies his wisdom, the Pu implies his compassion. And Shilpo means torn rags. This can imply that he had torn into shreds delusion. So in one way, Paltrimji is just saying this ragged old fellow, but then you could say those who are the followers of Paltrimji would say, oh yes, you are the old uncle, as the one who possesses wisdom and compassion, and yes, you are old rags. This comes from having torn to shreds the delusion of samsara. So then we now have the dedication of merit. This concludes our study, basically. Paltrimji says, I have just been prattling on and on, but so what? My theme is of great worth, and its meaning unerring. So the merit it brings, I offer to you, and to all of us, throughout the 3 worlds. May all the wishes we make, inspired by the teachings, come true. So, Rinpoche says, well, just about him, by the way, prattling, and his understatement. This is something that we see a lot, and I'll say I would like to say sort of on my own sort of account, that this way of being understated, we could say, oh, it's sort of a convention, it's false modesty. And of course, it could be used like that, but in this case, I think we can assume that it's genuine, And also when we have somebody, when we have even just, it becomes, you could say, a culture, it's actually very beautiful. It's a very beautiful culture of not promoting yourself. Sometimes in modern context, when people are understated or modest, they would say, "Oh, you should have confidence. You should, you should, they miss the point. There's tremendous power when people are modest. There's tremendous power when there's understatement. So this we shouldn't fail to see when we have someone like Paltrimajah who sort of just says, "Oh yeah, this ragged old fellow, and what's the point of me going on here?" Everything we have in this work, by the way, then is consistent with all the teachings we have in the Buddha Dharma. So there's nothing in this which is not worth applying. And Rinpoche, he says, should any merit have accrued, therefore, from having expounded the three parts of this discourse, beginning, middle, and end, he goes on to dedicate it to all beings, so that following the path of the Bodhisattvas, they may reach the supreme level of Chenrezig. So this is then the conclusion with dedication. There's going to just be one more really, which is Khyentse Rinpoche's epilogue. So here then, postscript. Now what we're looking at here Khyentse Rinpoche's commentary about the context really is that, yes, we have 1,000 years of Buddhism in Tibet. Initially then you had three great kings, Songtsen Gampo, Trisong Detsen, and Trijal Chen. And it's on the basis of these and also many other great masters that then made aspirations that we have this Buddhism that flourished in Tibet. And within this realm of Tibet, then you had the entire heritage of Indo-Tibetan Buddhism that was preserved, all the teachings of the Tripitaka, all the teachings of the Shastras from the great masters and commentators and sages of India, and all the Upadeshas and pith instructions from the lineages of great masters. All of that was flourished in Tibet for over 1,000 years. And according to some of the scriptures and the predictions, the land of Tibet was viewed as a sacred realm of Chenrezig, and Rinpoche describes how as much as the Tibetans also in self-deprecation would say we're descendants of, what is it again, an ogre and a monkey, then they also would say innately there was the practice of seeing all men as Chenrezig and all women as Ayatara. So we had this realm of Tibet, which was then dedicated to the practice of the Dharma. And despite then the horrors that we've had in the recent time, we all are familiar with the situation of Tibet. The teachings have actually survived thanks to great masters like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others. And also the teachings, despite the dire circumstances in Tibet, many great men and women have practiced the teachings, and their faith and their realization has flourished in the midst of all this difficulty. Now, as compassion is the heart of all the teachings, this particular practice of invoking Chenrezig and the quality of compassion is so important. When we talk about Chenrezig, it can be understood in many ways. We would say the primordial ground of all Buddhas is Chenrezig, that Chenrezig then manifests as a great bodhisattva, manifesting the pure realm of Potala. But also then we would say inwardly, ultimately Chenrezig abides within ourselves as our own wisdom and compassion. So thanks to that, us chanting Chenrezig has a basis. It's not just about we're empty and Chenrezig is out there. No, the genuine, true Chenrezig abides within. And thanks to the reflection externally, we can appreciate the qualities, we can rejoice in the way that the qualities are manifest in this world. And in this way, we have a vivid, clear presence of Chenrezig. And as such, then, combining these two, understanding the inner potential that is our Buddha nature and the outer manifestation, then we chant the mantra, do the practice, sadhana, and the countless ways of integrating the practice of Chenrezig. Now, studying this is not enough. We need to put it into practice. It's through practice then that our being will be fused with Chenrezig. We say the mingling of our mind and the Dharma needs to be one. So right now we're not in this situation that many Tibetans lived under for many decades. We are free to practice. But at the same time, having the freedom won't be enough. We actually need to apply it. And when we apply it, we should do it with 3 supreme points. And you'll hear this many, many times. We need to have the preparation with bodhicitta, the intention that sees the relevance of what we're doing, how it applies for all sentient beings, and as such, what we're doing has universal value. In this way, our practice is not just about ourselves and us just retreating into an ultimate comfort zone, but is about us doing something that can benefit every single sentient creature. So that's the motivation that we bring. That's the preparation with bodhicitta. As we practice, we do so with mindfulness, without getting carried away by ordinary concerns, distractions, and so forth. And when we conclude the practice, we consider whatever good there is. It's something that we don't hold on to or grasp, but we give it away. And then the final words then in the commentary. Dingchen Rinpoche says, in this age, troubled by war, famine, disease, disasters, and physical and mental sufferings of all kinds, to think, even for an instant, of the welfare of others is of inconceivable merit. Please take these teachings to heart and put them into practice. That will render everything I have said here truly worthwhile. So this concludes our study. And I think the beauty of the teaching is that it's something that as we practice it, it attains more and more value. So the more we study this, the more it makes sense. And so we would say the teaching it's good in the beginning. When we hear this first time, we feel joy. As we begin to practice it, it doesn't wear out. The joy doesn't wear out. The value of it is enhanced as we experience the value of it. And it's something that ultimately is good because it fulfills the purpose of ourselves and it fulfills the purpose of others. So we'll be studying this text again and again. So I'd like to thank those people who over the years actually have requested, hey, aren't you going to teach the heart treasure of the enlightened ones? So I'm glad we have done this. Thank you very much for participating. I'll just see if there's any last questions. Thank you. I'm very happy others have been appreciating this also. Good. I'm glad we could do this together. Thank you. Okay. By this positive action, may all beings perfect the accumulation of merit and wisdom and attain the 2 supreme kayas which arise from merit and wisdom. Thank you.